Farlands or bust. Star date October 22nd, 2021. Hello. It's Friday. I have not streamed since last Friday, possibly. Um, because this week I got called in for jury duty, and that's the first time that's ever happened. And of course, that means, due to my luck, I also got assigned to the jury in the trial. So I've been gone all week. I possibly could have streamed, but I was in no mood nor no energy to do so after every day of that. Juno knows. That's pretty good. um, uh, if talking about jury duty is stressful and unpleasant, maybe some other topic would be. I feel like I would like to get it out though, because I also feel like this is the first thing that's ever happened to me in the last like 5 years that I can actually talk about. That's a new topic. That is not one that I've recounted over the past 800 plus episodes of and all the other things that I've made on the internet. um, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, not a huge deal, but the way that my mind and my anxieties and everything deal with situations like this, particularly relating to being in close contact and dealing with complete strangers and big groups of other human beings. Probably a little bit more of an annoyance than it is for perhaps your average human. Um, Although I'm sure many of you can relate. All right. Who's got your woofs ready? Not Juno. She doesn't bark. Woof. All right. All right. As I mentioned, I might not actually be making too much progress in Farlands or Bust because it's going to be distracting to talk about this stuff at the same time. Woof, 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 woof. I think we can leave here safely somehow if we go around this direction and continue to those Farlands in Minecraft Beta 173. But yeah, knowing what I know now, well, here's the deal. First, I got a piece of mail that was a jury questionnaire. This wasn't a summons. This wasn't a thing that said you've been selected to serve on a jury pool and then potentially serve on a jury. This was a jury questionnaire. This, if it pleases the court, is the document that I should have put directly in the circular file. That is the garbage and or shredder. Because that, in and of itself, is not a legal summons. That is just a thing that when they get the responses to, they add to the list of potential jurors. Everybody I've talked to said that they simply throw that away and they've never had a problem. Careful, Wolfie. Dumb, stupid idiot. So that was my first mistake. Because I was also thinking on the other side of the thing is like, people have told me, oh, you just fill it out. You might have to go, but you'll never get chosen. You'll never get picked. You'll never actually have. You just have to take a day off of work, and they pay you $40, and you get on with your life. To which all of those people, I would like to say, you are wrong. I don't know how to get through this. We've gotten ourselves in a situation here. Speaking of like trying to keep my mind on, I'm like on this plateau, and I don't want to jump down. So anyway, I did that, and then of course, I got the next piece of mail, which was the one that says you are one of the lucky people who was stupid enough to reply to that first message, and have been added to the list of people who need to show up on this day, which was Monday, to be part of a potential a pool of jurors to be chosen for a trial. That is when the anxiety set in. How do I get down from here? I might need to deploy my water bucket. I think that might be a good course of action, just to like make some actual process and progress. I'm not dead, and I'm not in space. Both perhaps more preferable than jury duty. So yeah, that's when the anxiety started. It continued because of the complete lack of information and communication. You're supposed to call the weekend before, because even though you're on the list, you still might not need to show up. And you're supposed to call to see if you've been randomly selected from a random selection of the random selection. I called, and the message I received, Lithos, made no sense. It wasn't like yes or no.
Look at us.
It was some, thank you for 59 months. It was some bizarre line of, you have been selected to serve on a jury. Just follow the instructions of the judge. You will not need to check this message again. Keep in mind, I've not been to the courtroom. I've not even showed up or anything like that. That was the only message. So, anxiety 211. There's a way you could check your status online. Same exact message, anxiety 211. I'm like, I guess that means I need to show up? It doesn't say. In the paperwork, it said that the time I need to show up should be confirmed with my confirmation message. It was not. I'm not even sure my confirmation message confirmed anything. So I had to email this email that they provided at like late Sunday. And then I finally did get a reply, and they said, yes, you're on the list and you need to show up at 11:30, or between 11:30 and noon, and which was different from what the pamphlet said, 9 a.m. on the pamphlet. So anyway, the whole system is out of order. You can't handle the truth. So right from the get-go, anxieties abound. I barely slept much on Sunday night because I knew the sort of things that happened during jury selection. But I get there on Monday morning. There's about 60 people in the room. And again, this is all during our current situation of there is still a pandemic going on. You're still required to wear a mask. We don't know who is and who isn't vaccinated. You know, this is all happening during this, which I already have anxieties about. And also, I've not spent time in a room with 60 people, complete strangers, in over 2 years. So yeah, very just confusing and stressful and anxiety-inducing. So you watch a few videos about, like, not having bias or prejudice. Have you spent time in a room with 6 people in 2 years? Not 6 strangers, that's for sure. I mean, well, I guess they would have to, I don't know 6 people. But anyway, then they assign you numbers, and then they say 1 through 55 line up in order, and you'll come with us to the courtroom for the jury questioning, or jury pool questioning. Of course, I was number 45. There were like 10 people who basically just had to spend all day in that other room with nothing happening by themselves. They're just extras, I guess, in case 10 people didn't show up. Have you spent time? Look at this neat little nook of waterfall and tree situations. So anyway, and this is like where anxiety went through the roof. Clearly, the process of jury selection is intended to intimidate and perhaps just like confuse and silence people, because I thought it was already through the roof. It's a multi-level housing unit, my anxiety, so there's many roofs. Yeah, you're in a courtroom. There's the prosecuting lawyers and the defending lawyers, the judge, and you know, everything else that happens in a courtroom. Like everybody has to sit like a seat apart, so we're all filling up the entire courtroom. I don't think there was a bailiff. Maybe there was. I don't remember. And then basically, the judge just starts asking questions of everybody, and if you like say yes, you have to like raise your number, and he'll point you out and ask you to explain why you answered that way. And I don't know how many of you like follow like psychological stuff, but I don't know what the term is, but when you're in a large group of people, and a large group of people do one thing or do another thing, then you're more likely to do that one thing or do the other thing, or not speak up when you would have spoken up, or vice versa. So I feel like that whole process is designed to do that. Which is very anxiety-inducing. And I know I wanted to get out of being on the jury, so I was trying to listen to the questions or whatever that would have helped me avoid getting chosen to be on jury duty specifically, but also not like flat out lie. Like people will say like, oh, you should show up in like flip-flops and a tank top, or oh, you should just like start spewing racist, hurtful propaganda or something like a crazy person. Then you'll be let go. I was not about to do that, being the person that I am, obviously, no matter how much I wanted to get out of it. I don't want to sleep on cotton. I want to sleep on a bed. So, and that's the thing. I feel like you'd have a better chance if you don't say anything at all, because it's the prosecutor and the defendant who get to choose the jurors. So if you don't say anything at all, they have no idea what your inclinations are. Therefore, you're a wild card, I feel. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if anybody who was on my jury said anything or not. I don't remember. But you can say nothing. If they point at you and say, answer this question, I think you have to respond. But as far as those general questions that the judge was asking, does anybody have any religious exemptions to wanting to pass judgment on a person? Does anybody, is anybody... One of the first questions he asked, and I probably should have answered, and this is the case where everybody did a thing, and to not stick out, I went along with everybody, is he asked if anybody has a problem serving on a jury, regardless of whether or not your other jury members are vaccinated, their vaccination status, or their vaccination opinions. If you can do that without bringing that up or holding prejudices or making that an issue. Nobody answered yes. That is something I should have answered yes to, because truthfully it does bother me. But I didn't, and here I am. Well, that's the thing. You can say no, but that doesn't mean you're out. They'll just say, okay. Like, we'll take that under advisement. Once you're in that room, you're like set. You're legally obligated to stay in that room. And you have, the only way you can get out is if the judge dismisses you. There were 2 people who were dismissed. One lady said she doesn't trust the courts because something happened to one of her kids, and the courts did not find the defendant guilty, and she does not trust the process. Another lady was saying that similarly, she served on some case, and now she's super anxious and nervous, and her palms are sweating, and can she please be excused? So, like, 2 people got excused by the judge. Again, I shouldn't have answered, but I was answering truthfully. One of the questions asked is if there's the testimony of a police officer or officer of the law, would your opinions of police officers impact the credibility you apply to that testimony? Nobody raised their hand. I raised my hand and then had to explain that because of everything, I do not trust the testimony of police officers.
At this time of year, at this time of day,
that person,
in this part of the country,
SimSport,
entirely within
these are going to be some confused. Oh, Juno, what were you doing down there? she was under a table and then stood up and hit the table. You dingus. I don't know. I mean, it was the truth. I'm kind of proud that given that I didn't answer the first question about vaccinations, I'm like, I finally feel like I got the guts to speak up and speak exactly what I believed. It might have been the thing that got me on the jury. Well, thank you for the raid. But I kind of thought that, like, the judge would have been offended by that and, like, dismissed me on the spot, but again, he didn't. So yeah, I that was the only question I answered, and I stayed silent the rest of the time. I was in the back, I was in the last row, I was number 45 out of 55. I didn't know what to expect, but I was also mentally dying. Anxiety, panic-wise. The prosecuting lawyers asked questions, still very general, not really specifically pointing everybody out. But then this is where things got weird. And I don't know if this is true of every case, but the defending attorneys started talking about COVID and has it impacted anyone's life? And do you think there's room for multiple opinions on COVID and treatments? Basically getting the group emotionally charged and talking about masks and this and that. And I heard this, and I heard one guy was like, Fauci invented it and brought it over from China. I saw that documentary, and like other people were like, yeah. But then one of the jurors answered, hi Juno, chill. Called him out and said, you're trying to taint the jury pool, which would get the case, you know, you'd have to throw out all the juries all the jurors and start from scratch. I'd never considered, because I was mid panic attack. I was not really paying attention. The rural juror. So that was weird. And this defense attorney was, like, not to cast stereotypes on lawyers, but he was a very lawyery lawyer. So yeah, basically he called him out. Of course, that guy didn't get chosen as a juror because he was too opinionated. You can't be too opinionated and get chosen to the jury. So yeah, I mean, this, like I said, I had to get there at like noon, and like this went all the way to like 4 when we left, and then I guess that's when they were deliberating. I thought at that point that the case was going to get delayed, not knowing the rules and regulations and whatever, but that's probably what the defense was arguing at that point, that the jury pool was tainted. I mean, that was another thing during that exchange where the defense attorney was trying to get us all riled up. No, like, it was all the conspiracy theorists who were speaking up. Nobody on like your and I reasonable sides like spoke up, because he would be like, does anybody disagree with that? And everybody was just like totally weirded out by the whole line of questioning. Which I don't know, if it became like an argument between jurors, then that might have been what qualified a tainted jury. That's not jury nullification, that's something entirely different.
Oh. I almost swallowed that nut.
Rural tainted juror.
So yeah, we went, they were doing whatever, and then we were called back into the room, and then he was going to list the chosen jurors, which I was surprised at, and my anxiety then went through a different roof. And like I said, I was like number 45 out of 55 or 60 or something like that, whoever was in the room. So like he started listing them off, you know, juror 7, juror 8, juror 12, juror this, juror that. And of course, even though I'd said only that one thing, he goes, juror 40, juror 42, juror 44, and juror 45. And I was just, son of a bitch. The last one to have been chosen was me. Of course. Of course it was. Why wouldn't it have been? Of course. And I assume, we'll never know, but I assume it was the defense who chose me. Because, I don't know, in America, it's not the judge who picks the jury, it's the prosecution picks 12, or 6, or in this case 7, and the defense picks 7, because they get to choose who they think is going to vote for them. And there were 14 of us because there were 2 alternates in case somebody got sick or couldn't show up. I think in the process, like, if the defense chooses one person and the prosecution vehemently disagrees, they have like three I don't know what to call it. Like in Uno, when you say another card, try again, to flip it, like they say no, like you can object. Veto, thank you. So yeah, it's a whole game, basically. Mulligan. And yeah, it's just beans. Beans. And that's when the anxiety really just went through the entire building and the building surrounding it. The anxiety neighborhood, I like to call it. The anxiety district. Yeetos. So yeah. I hated it. at that point, the way I'm learning, I learned a lot from this. The way I learned that my anxiety works is it's not anxiety so much about the future, it's anxiety about decisions I've already made that are now irreversible. How can I reverse them and get out of them? What are all of the options I can do to reverse the decision to hand in that questionnaire, to show up on that Monday morning? To not have answered that first question, to have answered any question. Why didn't I just get up and walk out of the room and leave and go home? You know, everything and everything. Maybe I should get in an accident on the way home, and that way I'll be excused. Like dark, sad, unfortunate things that I don't want to repeat. But yeah, that's where my anxiety comes from. It seems like the majority of it. So yeah, that was, I didn't sleep at all. I didn't sleep at all Monday night, because Tuesday is when the trial begins, and the unlucky 14 of us had to return for the actual trial. I got zero sleep. Like, it was like 2 a.m. and I'm like, I'm not sleeping, so I like took some sleep aid pills, and like that helped for maybe an hour. And then I had to get up at 7 or whatever to get there at 8:30. Maybe I should rob this liquor store so I don't have to go back in. Like, literally. Even though I know, in the grand scheme of things, at this point we already knew it wasn't like a murder trial. We knew what the trial kind of was at that point already. But it was still just the anxiety of having to do this thing that I do not want to do, and that I don't feel prepared to do, and I just don't want to be a part of. And I would rather be streaming or being at home. I'm going to lose all my subscribers, etc., etc., etc. This is going to take 3 weeks. What am I doing? Oh, I'm making beds. I need beds. Oh, okay, maybe just 2 beds. So yeah, I'm not at all saying that my anxieties are rational at all. That's why they're anxieties. So yeah. Interestingly enough, I'm gonna to let you know what the trial was. We've all, or most of us, have seen Contagion, right? Remember how the defense attorney was talking about COVID and stuff? We've all seen Contagion, right? The movie starring Gwyneth Paltrow, Matt Damon, and others, about the virus that comes from a Chinese bat and pig, and Gwyneth Paltrow brings it back, and it starts a huge pandemic. No, nobody's seen Contagion. All right, the biggest box office hit of 2014, nobody has seen. Or whenever, I don't know what year it came out. Okay, I guess this is a bad analogy to make then. Anyway, Jude Law also stars in that film, and Jude Law plays someone who, during this pandemic, which they, in all Hollywood movies, portray as, you know, the worst thing ever, and like people are dying in the streets, and quarantines are going up around Chicago, and things like that. Jude Law plays someone, I think he plays like a podcaster or a blogger or somebody on the internet, those bad internet people, who is online and, you know, is conspiracy theorist and says they're lying to you about this, they're lying about that, and then he says this will cure COVID. He says, or not COVID, this will cure the contagion. I have it right now, and he like appears sick, and he drinks this homeopathy thing, and then he says he's cured, and this is where you can buy it from me, the cure. Who would have thought real life could be even stupider? True. Jude Law's character was the defendant in our case, because I'm sure they're not the only one. At the beginning, in March 2020 of the pandemic, he, via his Facebook page, was selling natural... Juno, sit. Stay. Natural... It doesn't matter what it is. A product, pills, that he said cures COVID, cures MRSA, which is the flesh-eating bacteria, as well as all these bacteria and viruses and blah, 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 blah. Did you write down super guilty? Extreme guilty. But this person also, in the state of Washington, because we're extreme liberal here, the state of Washington license naturopathic doctors as doctors. So this person was a doctor of naturopathic medicine. And that's recognized as a thing here in the state of Washington. Oh no. There's like, I don't know how many other states, 12 states that also do that. So yeah, this person had been like practicing for 33 years. An interesting thing about it is that, and we weren't supposed to consider this, and we didn't consider this, but he had already had his license stripped from the licensing authority in Washington for previously doing the same exact thing. But like as part of the jury, we were only supposed to just have that as a statement of fact. How do you lose a homeopathic doctor license? True. Like, we're only like, that is a thing that happened. That does not mean that he's just like, you can't assume somebody's going to be a repeat offender, sort of thing. You have to judge every trial based on that trial only, and not previous stuff that is currently not on trial for. But super guilty, right? So yeah, it was the federal government and the FDA who did the investigation and who were suing him. So it was the United States government v. this person. I need more trees. See, this is my problem. I have like actually a story to tell and things to talk about, and I am not paying attention to the actual Minecrafting. Like I need wools too. I guess we'll be good for a little bit, but not a Naruto path, a naturopath. Yes. So yeah, like I'm not gonna go through every bit of evidence and every okay. Once I was done with that Tuesday, like once I got up and went, I was almost late. They like called me and were like, "Where are you?" And I'm like, "I'm through security now. I'm gonna leave that. I'm sorry. There might be a golden apple in that spawner, but I'm far too distracted to have to actually also do that." What was I saying? So yeah, as far as my anxieties were concerned, like once I got up, barely had anything to eat, skipped my coffee because I thought I was going to puke it up from anxiety on that Tuesday morning, after I had only slept for less than 2 hours. And I got there and the thing actually started. trials are boring. First of all, I was at that point. I just became more annoyed with the process and still with myself for getting myself in that situation and not being able to get out of the situation. So at that point, I was just mad. Still like a little bit of anxiety and stuff, but mostly mad. So yeah, like the first day and into the second day, was the prosecution, the government, and they had everything very well pinned together and made up. They had what they had him on was the fact that he sold and shipped these items across state lines, and bingo, that's when it becomes a federal case, and that's why we were in a federal court, and this was a felony criminal case. So that was like one of the aspects of the charges. So they had an undercover agent with the FDA, but you didn't know those exist, in California, call up the guy, because on his Facebook, he was making claims that this, like he around, actually exactly on March 2020, he was saying, oh, heard about this China virus and stuff like that. Are you worried about it? This thing, or this product I'm selling, will crush it. And he used words like treatment and it saved someone's life that I gave it to for MRSA. That FDA agent is in deep cover and hasn't seen their family in years. I think it's a very light cover because that agent was there. Yeah, like the federal government and the prosecution, like, flew them in from California, flew in multiple people from Washington, D.C., the headquarters, and somebody from like a lab in Cincinnati, and like, so yeah, they spared no expense. And I don't know what the case is, but I think the defendant probably requested an in-person trial in an effort to make it difficult, because they're still doing Zoom trials and video conference trials. But this is, I think the bailiff told us, or one of the assistants told us, that this was only like the third case that they've had in person since the whole thing started. But yeah, anyway, they had a special agent call them, say that a friend told them about their Facebook posts and they're worried about COVID. And then this guy liked to talk. We got to listen to the phone call, obviously. It was a piece of evidence. And he was going on about, like, one of his clients had MRSA and this thing cured him. And he wasn't saying it boosted the immune. Like, if you can say something boosts the immune system. But he was saying that this thing is the thing that directly kills viruses, which is where you get into trouble. Which is why all your bottles of vitamin C and whatever all say, this is not intended to treat any disease or illness and has not been addressed by the FDA or whatever. Right. So, yeah. I mean, it was a very strong case, as far as that is concerned. They had the agents testify. I found it amusing that they really didn't need to do that undercover thing, because then the defense actually had like 3 of his customers show up to testify. One of them was from Arizona. And the first thing the cross-examiner asked them was like, you bought these products from the defendant and he shipped them to you in the mail. So like that right there was also a second admission and case of selling the products touted across state lines. Was he saying boost or boo earns? So yeah, I mean after all this strife and separation and terror and anxiety, a sign, a ray, a Raymond trace of hope. It's a pink sheep. Pink sheep. Pink sheep. Woo, buddy. Juno heard that. Juno heard the pink sheep. Oh. Oh. They have shone down upon us. These tidings. These tidings of the turn of the tides. And other Gandalf things. Stop moving around, I'm trying to take a screenshot, you dingus. Oi, mate. This guy's a jittery fella. Ah! There it is.
Kurt Car 1, Kurt Car 2, Kurt Car 3, Kurt Car 4, Kurt Car 5.
Thank you, Key Sky. This has been Counting with Kurt Car. Oh, a sign that justice has been served. Oh, oh. What do we call this guy? I wanted to say the pink sheep of justice, but that's Nebrus's thing. And I don't want to be part of this process of justice ever again, for as long as I shall be immortal. Harvey Birdman. Sheep of pink. Bird sheep. Juror number 45. Oh no, I don't want to remember. So I gotta do this in all caps. Laz. What is today? There we go. It makes no reference to jury duty or the anxieties I've had to endure. It's simply Harvey Birdman. Pink sheep at law. Oh. Come on. Look at me. Ah. I mean, that'll have to do. Watch out! I can't make those sound effects. Alright, thank you, Pink Sheep. You have assuaded us of the anxieties and stressors of this past week. That's a screenshot you'll definitely look at one day. Yes, amongst the 743 that are in that folder, or whatever it is. So where was I going with this? Anyway, at one point they brought in an FDA chemist, who like they sent the stuff to a lab to get tested. I don't think they needed to do that. That wasn't part of the charges, that it wasn't effective. It doesn't matter if it was effective or not. It matters that he touted it as a cure and sent it across state lines. misbranded it, as it were. But I think they did that to head off any potential defense line that would say, why didn't you test it? Why didn't you bring it into a lab? You didn't even open the bottle. The bottle could have been empty. You know, I think that was just the prosecution covering their asses and every possible, like, defense strategy. But yeah. So yeah, that, I mean, was just, you know, question and answer and question and answer and question and answer and object overruled and question and answer and object relevancy and overruled and question and answer sort of stuff. My stress went up a little bit. We're retelling this story based on levels of stress. The stressometer, the anxiety roof counter. It's almost like they busted people for this before. Including, not that we were supposed to consider it, but including the person who is currently on trial for it. So yeah, the anxiety came back because the defense then gets to show its witnesses and ask questions and do its dance. Like I said before, the defense, including Mr. Super Guilty, and like I mentioned, the defense team was
slide that into your DMs
Mr.
and twitch it.
Lawyer.
This won't show until later, but 2/3 RDS of the way to 666.
Oh yes, tier 2. I don't know. Does the tier 2 count for more than one? You might be a third of the way there. Thank you very much, Celeste Rose, for 66 months of a tier 2 sub. Dub. So yeah, and I knew they were gonna call up his previous clients who say they trust him. And they know that he had his license revoked, and they don't care. He's just providing advice. He's not, I don't think I had a cure for COVID. I wasn't tricked by the marketing materials. And they were a progressively more difficult series of people to listen to because they were all, I don't take drugs. I don't poison my body. I do my own research. I always get multiple opinions. I search the internet and websites for my health needs. Somebody in the deliberations brought this up later, but they thought it was funny. One of those people came in and said that they've had a cold for like 5 days, and then it's like, well, wait a minute, aren't you supposed to have this stuff that prevents your cold at the first sign of it? Like, I thought that's the reason you're on this very specific regimen of garlic and roots and tinctures. The one lady they called up kept talking about tinctures. And that was their third witness, and like the prosecution like had an objection to like the relevancy of anything she was saying, and the judge agreed with that and said sustained like multiple times. But then like the lady started to answer the question, and the attorney had to be like, no. When the judge says sustain, that means you can't answer the question. So yeah, they ran out of questions for her real quick because none of them like were you know, none of the objections were overruled. Tinctures? I don't know what tinctures are. Aren't those like, here's a little micro mini molecule of this, and that will cure your cancer. Yeah, that's mostly what I think a term that's associated with homeopathy, which is like, here's an essence of this diluted in a gallon of water. And that will cure this. Yeah, just like put a drop under your tongue. I'm an ointment man myself. Lather me up. So yeah, and then they started to bring up other naturopathic experts and doctors. But basically the defense was that like it doesn't matter. like these things could work. People have a right to choose. Look at all these people who use it and it's fine. The last expert they brought up quoted a bunch of studies that said they're very promising with studying this element in treating certain things. And then the defense started to read out those studies. And there were like 15 studies, and they were all just, he was just reading out the titles of the studies. And then got objected to. And then he said he planned to submit all of these studies as evidence, and the judge denied it. Womp womp. The judge denied it as, like, he's like, we're not going to make the jury read these 14 obscure studies from homeopathists for the you know, their studies on, you know, 4 people, why garlic does this, that, or the other. Yeah, it was funny. Like there is a study that showed promise in treating COVID, and he's like, it was published in an obscure journal, and it's out of a lab in Iran, but it's a study. Like, you have not made the case you're thinking you're making. That was another argument the defense was making, was like, and because that was okay. I guess I'll be specific. That was one of the products was based on an extract from garlic, and the defenses were saying that garlic isn't a drug. Garlic is a food. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. If you vote guilty here, that means you won't be able to buy garlic without a prescription. This is about common sense. Like, that was their main argument, essentially. Because then they were like, what about chicken soup? Chicken soup you always eat when you have a cold. Is chicken soup a drug? Is chicken soup going to require a prescription? Are you going to accuse people of selling chicken soup of selling a drug? Garlic is common sense. Ah, dang, I should have said that at some point. So yeah, bleh. Anyway, and yeah, that went on for a while. That was, yeah, I mean, anyway, it just, honestly, the trial itself, how long did the trial take? I think the trial itself only took 2 days. I was worried it was going to take longer, because at the beginning they list the list of witnesses they're going to bring up, and it was like a long list for each of them, and I'm like, oh lord, we're going to be here forever. But that went through pretty quick. So yeah, it was like 2 days of testimony, and then the prosecution came back and cross-examined somebody, and so did the defense, or however it works. And then they rested both of their cases. And then we had to go back on Thursday. Yeah, because the trial started on Tuesday, went into Wednesday. They rest their case at the end of Wednesday. We went home, came back. Don't talk about the trial. Don't. The fellow jurors, don't talk about it to anybody who lives with you at home. Anybody, don't write anything out. Don't look anything up. You're not supposed to look anything up. I obviously didn't. You know, you're not supposed to do any investigations yourself. Not even you, until after you've been released, which I have. And I ain't never going back. Don't stream it. Don't charge a subscription fee to review the VOD. So yeah. And then we went back yesterday morning to hear the closing arguments. The prosecution basically just reviewed all of their evidence that they had and said, this is the law, this is specifically how it was broken, and this is, you know, this isn't about garlic or common sense or is it a food or is it a drug? It's not about that. Then, of course, the defense, which it's their job, they have to do this for their client.
Slide that into your DMs and Twitch it.
Brian!
What's up, guys? It's KURTJMAC here, coming to you live from jury duty.
Coming to you live from
Look at us.
the
Look at us. Say it again.
annals of the judicial system.
Return of the Mac. Come on. Return of the Mac. Oh my god.
Brian, thank you for 67 months in the subtub. Vash, thank you for 48 months in the subtub. Did you come here together? Did you carpool to the stream, Brian and Vash? So yeah. Anyway. And like, as I mentioned, up until this point, there were like 3 or 4 jurors who were staying in hotels. Because this is a federal case, they drew from a pool of jurors, not statewide, I guess this was Western Washington, but the entire Western Washington. So yeah. Also, just like also going back, let me sleep here. Is this, I think there's one more night, or should this be the last night? I don't want the game to crash. Again, I'm very combobulated. Discombobulated, like. Let's hold on. Hold that thought. A brief recess. If I may. This game crashes if you do 5 nights in a session. It's about an hour or so. It does. It might. The first sign is that there's no more animals around. The animal spawns stop. So just as a precaution, we stop to save the game and then start up again. Sustained. Yeah, let's go to sleep, do that, and then I'll pick up my thought when we come back. Right, that was probably a local county court then, I'm assuming, Brian. This, my first, since you missed it, this is my first jury duty ever. Not only then being called to serve on the jury, was in a federal court. A United States federal court, which draws from a wider pool and does federal crimes. So, federally, F me, I guess, right? Okay, hold on, I'm gonna restart the game. I'm gonna use the bathroom too while I'm at it. So I'm gonna BRB. All right, continuing where we left off. Weirdly, specifically, we're at 37,700 point something 8 megabytes. That's a interestingly round number, roundish number. Got your woofs ready, hopefully. Oh my, that was this entire week. Another thing I found out about my anxiety and stress. Not only am I gluten intolerant and gluten free because of that, but anxiety. Anxiety is also a gluten, apparently, because, ooh, buddy. Just that gesture. Let's continue. Irrelevant. Woof. All right, continuing on. I was going to say before the break that I mentioned previously that the whole process of jury selection, jury duty, like not a lot of people, but some people I'm sure are like, being in jury duty gives you a view of the government, the civic judicial process. Any person can have an open experience and participate in the jury process. For me, it only that information, that window, has only shown me how more effed it is and how not it is. Like how not fair, not clear, not not perfect, very imperfect system it is. One of the things being is like, oh, the selecting from a jury of peers of an equal and representative sample of the community, of the population. Everybody on the jury, I think except for two, out of 14 people, 2 alternates, everybody except for 2 were extremely Caucasian. I'm gonna go with extremely Caucasian. Very white jury. Not representative of the population at large. And also I'd say of that, about not quite half, but almost half were of retirement age. Retirement age. So yeah. There were certainly no reassurances on that front that the whole equal and fair representation of the community was being met. Retired Caucasians. I used to be a professional Caucasian, but now I'm a retired Caucasian. But anyway, like that, yeah, that was just an obvious oversight. Not oversight, but just it's built into the system. That's the way the system is built, etc., etc. Anyway, so yeah, we came back on Thursday. They did their final hurrahs, or whatever they're called, the closing statements. The prosecutions, the government's was very, these are the facts, these are the elements, what's the word I'm saying? The evidence. Yeah, the evidence. Did I say that? And this is how it applies to the charges, etc., etc. Whereas the defense's was very, you're gonna have to get a prescription for garlic now. It's common sense. Buyer beware. It should be known. This is government overreach. yeah, well, that sort of stuff. And then we were going to find out, like I said, there were 14 jurors. There was still a chance I could get out of it. There were 14 jurors. 2 were alternates in case during the course of the trial somebody couldn't continue. That morning, somebody couldn't continue because they had a family emergency and they were excused. So then there was only 1 alternate. I had hoped because I was at the end of the list that maybe it was me, but no, it was not me. It was somebody else. Somebody else was the alternate. So I don't know if I would have been more angry. I would have been very glad to get to leave. But it would have been a small thorn in the side to have had to sit through the entire thing and go through all the stress and all the time spent, etc., and listening to everything, and then be told, you can leave. You're actually just here as a backup, and you now have no say in the deliberations. But yeah, it didn't happen. I had to stay. So you missed the beginning. This is a criminal federal case. So anyway, this is the part where the jury gets locked in a room and cannot leave. I mean, because of COVID, we were put in an adjacent but smaller, like, courtroom, because the actual jury rooms are, like, not much bigger than this room. So I'm kind of glad for that, so that we could, like, spread out a bit. But yeah, then the deliberations. I don't know how much I want to talk about those specifically. Ooh, this is another spawner, I hope, at least. Or that would be a weird way for Cobble to just randomly show up. And a chicken! It's a chicken spawner. Go on, get it. Objection. Was the judge in a mask? No, I mean, everybody had to wear a mask, except the judge, except the questioning attorney, and except the witness. The judge and the witness were, like, behind plexiglass, which, as we all know, does nothing. But yeah, like, they had to have, I think, their mouths visible for speaking purposes, and there were microphones and things. What do we got? Well, I believe the pink sheep has now been nullified. We are back at square one. Dang it! Just when I thought I could get out. All right, gotta go. Hold on a second. Gotta go. No, I thought I heard a noise, and I don't want, like, the girlfriend to come home with the cats while Juno's still up here, but she's supposed to text me, so I am aware of that.
I almost swallowed that nut.
Just hen, you thought you could get out. Missile.
So anyway, we can't get that spawner because there's a golden record in there and it is cursed. Like me. What was I gonna say? As I had feared through the trial, some of the members of the jury were confused or convinced by the defense, or believed and trusted naturopathic doctor stuff. So it wasn't a initially easy decision to come to. Like nobody, like you have to choose a foreperson, a leader of the jury, and then that's the person that runs allegedly the discussion, and then that's the person who actually hands the verdict over. You have to be unanimous in a federal court. It has to be unanimous either way, with either decision. So yeah, that's why getting a federal court trial is a real pain in the ass. Other trials might not need, they might only need a majority of a certain percentage or that or this or whatever. It all depends on, I think, the charges, but all federal cases need to be unanimous. It depends on the if it, you know, with a local court. I don't know. I never want to know. I never want to participate in this sort of situation ever again. So yeah, there was going to need to be some discussion and convincing and clarification. Like nobody was volunteering, because the jury is supposed to vote and agree upon a leader, a foreperson, and nobody was volunteering. I almost volunteered up until this point. Because I was in a bad mood, I hadn't talked to anybody on the jury. Like personally, like you're not supposed to talk about the case, but just personally, like some of them had gone out to lunch together and were friendly and chatty and things like that. I was the brooding Kurt, the quiet type, quiet guy in the back. But there was someone else who did kind of have a personality, and like she was the one who organized their little lunch meeting. So like they all looked at her when like it came time to like volunteer, and I didn't speak up. I mean, that turned out okay. I do feel like at times it was allowed to get off track, and because of that we spent probably more time. Personality, where do you get those? We spent more time. It took longer than I think it should have. But yeah, I mean, and when you're sequestered in deliberation, like you can't leave or anything like that, so the court has to buy you lunch. And of course they chose an Italian restaurant, and they gave you the menu, and I'm like, I can't eat anything on this. I did that day pack a lunch just in case, even though I didn't know if I was an alternate or not. I made a sandwich. I was still gonna take their free lunch if I could, but second worst lunch option after bakery. It did fortunately turn out that I found this place had pizzas and they had a gluten-free crust. So I had to like very boldly write next to my selection, gluten-free, allergy. So I got a pizza for lunch, and then I got, because spoiler alert, this was Thursday. We didn't reach a decision by the end of Thursday, so we had to come back today, and we were continuing through lunch, and I had to order again from the same place. I already still have a pizza left over, so I just ordered a salad. Should have gone for gluten and gone off for jury poops. I got the jury runs. So anyway, I think, I mean, certainly some people were swayed by the defense's scare tactics about, like, where does it end? Can marbles be a drug? Can chicken soup be a drug? Can birthday cake be a drug? And the answer is yes. The answer is yes. I now know more about FDA nomenclature and regulations than I ever wanted to know. But yes, they can be a drug. It doesn't matter what it is. It matters how you sell it, how you package it, how you label it, how you advertise it. But a lot of people were hung up on that pretty significantly. They're like, that doesn't make sense. But you have to apply the law. Everything is drugs. Right, it's about what you say it is. And like, yeah, a fair number of people had problems wrapping their heads around that. And like, that's fine. That's what the deliberations are for. I myself got stuck on a point that didn't need to be proved. There was the distinction between drug and then prescription drug. And we spent a little bit of time talking about that because we took a vote of if it was a prescription drug, and I was the only one who voted yes. And I'm like, oh no. So I was trying to make that argument, which to me still made sense. But it turns out, as the procedure was given to us, we needn't had made that decision because we had already made previous decisions that like, it was basically like, if 3 of these things, here's 3 things. If you find 1 or more of these things, then that answers your question. We had already found 2 of them, and the 3rd thing was the prescription thing. And I thought we needed to be unanimous about everything, but we didn't in that case, because that wasn't the actual verdict. That was just the means by which we come to the verdict. Is it only you in there, or other legal people in there? No, it's only us. It's only us. We cannot talk to anybody. Like when people bring our lunch in, or if anybody comes in, we have to immediately stop talking. If anybody leaves the room to like use the bathroom or anything, we have to stop talking about the case because every juror has to be present to have a discussion about the case. So yeah, the only thing we can do is through the foreperson ask a question of the judge to clarify something. So that is what we did about the prescription drug thing. After we did that, I realized we didn't need to. And I felt bad for like wasting time. I don't think anybody understood it either, but I could have saved maybe a little bit of time, but it certainly wasn't going to get resolved in one day. So yeah, we had to go back today, and then in that time, a juror kind of dug in their feet about a decision. Look, do you want the? I think you can already guess where it went. I, from the end of the trial onward, thought the verdict was guilty. Like even like just like personally, I very much disagree with the process and the justice system. In this case, I just thought it was like too clear not to, and I was already like legally obligated to participate. So yeah, I thought that the case was very solid. That it was. Any votes for super guilty? Is this a slider? Is this like a language slider in that one video game? The most language or the less language? And I mean, at first, not everybody was on board with that because we had to have the discussion to clarify away the confusion about that means anything's a drug. It's not a drug. That doesn't make sense. But there was still one person who, and it's, you know, that's totally their right, who was hung up on a point about that. And I mean, at that point, it feels like it's 11 people ganging up on one person, but that's exactly what it is. Because you have to be unanimous in the decision. There's guilty or not, but then there's a level of punishment. That's not what the jury does. Which was part of this person's hang-up, is like, they were like, well, I don't think they need to be charged with a federal crime for this. Like, yeah, they did something wrong, but I'm like, well, that's not our job. We say guilty or not guilty, and then we go home, and then it's the judge who decides the punishment. Well, based on what the law says the punishment, the maximum allowable punishment, and anywhere there within needs to be. So yeah, this person was hung up on that, and that's fine. And then he started to get hung up on reasonable doubt, which of course is what every defense makes claim for, is like, you've got reasonable doubt, don't you? Reasonable doubt, that's reasonable. Use your reason. Reasonable doubt, then you have to say not guilty. So yeah, it just is all different ways of trying to explain the same thing to somebody. And some people in the room did that better than others. I don't know how well. I feel like, I mean, probably people didn't like me to begin with because I hadn't talked to them the entire week. Can someone abstain? No. You are legally obligated. You took an oath that you are serving as a jury, and you have to, as a jury member, to do your duty. So yeah, it has to be a unanimous decision about everything. I feel it's a little bit lucky as there was only one count. Like some trials have like, 20 different charges against a defendant, and you have to determine guilt or not guilt on every single one of them. We only had one that we had to determine. So that was good. I don't know. It was less worse. So yeah, eventually, I honestly think he talked. Well, here's the funny thing. Oh, we had to get lunch again, like I mentioned, and we were stuck at that point, and people were talking about like giving up, and I'm like, no, we don't. That's the other option, is if you can't come to a consensus, not a consensus, unanimous decision would result in a hung jury, and then a hung jury means a mistrial, and then the whole thing has to start magnanimous, has to start over again with a new jury. And I feel like perhaps, obviously people were getting tired of this. They had already made up their minds. This one person said, I'm not going to change my mind. So then people started to talk, and even started to talk and like think, well, do we write a note now and say that we're stuck? And I'm like, first of all, that's very serious. And I feel like I don't know. I've never done it, and I will never do it again. But I feel like if only after the 1.5 days we'd been deliberating, I feel like the judge can come back and say, no, keep deliberating. Like he like you can't, like, it's up to him when your time is up. So I didn't even want to like let it get to that, because that would just complicate things even more. Is there a chance there is a jury who is friends with the guilty guy? One of those many questions that we had to answer in the very beginning before we were chosen was, do we know, or do we think we know, any of the lawyers, the defendant, any of the witnesses, anyone, the judge, anyone in basically involved in the case? And you can lie, obviously, but you're under oath not to lie. And if it's later found out that you were friends with a person, then you go to jail. So, no, I mean, there's a chance. Like I said, the process is very imperfect, but that's not supposed to happen. Like I said, I think the defense probably chose me because I made the comment about not trusting the testimony of a cop. So they're probably like, this guy's anti-government. Yeah, this guy's on our side. But they were very wrong, specifically about the naturopathy, homeopathy business.
I am streaking 4 months.
Streaking 4 months. Thank you very much for that tier 2 sub, not. 4 months in a row, sub-tub. So yeah, where was I going with that? Yeah, eventually the one holdout. It was funny because we had lunch. We all ate lunch. I'm very curious if there are statistics on how many juries come to a decision after they've had lunch. Like, everybody's hangry and tired, and then they're fed and happy, and their bellies are full, and they're warm, and they're feeling more pliable. Like, I wonder, there must be a study or psychological or just statistical information about that. Because that was the case here. After that, I don't even think we were talking about it, but I feel like the holdout looked at the rules and convinced himself when looking at the reasonable doubt, because like there's a reasonable doubt. There's a clause that says it doesn't mean there shouldn't be any doubt. Like, you can still have doubt, either because of missing or not included evidence that you wonder about, or whatever, but reasonable doubt, because you're only supposed to look at the evidence that was presented in the trial. You're not supposed to speculate about what could be out there. So yeah, he convinced himself that the doubts he has were just a doubt, but not a reasonable doubt. I also think that you know, like I said, everybody just had lunch, and we felt better and more friendly. So yeah, that was. Then we finally came to a decision about that. People changing their mind, that's a thing that happens? Yeah, I mean, that was another thing. Like, some people said that they don't agree with the law, and it's like, well, we're stuck here. I don't agree with having to be on jury duty, but here I am. Yeah, there's you get a whole booklet of instructions from the judge, which I'm sure is all stuff that is painstakingly written and argued about and decided upon by the two parties beforehand. About you do get a book, like I said, you do get a book of these are the rules to deciding your verdict. You're supposed to decide your verdict based on the law as the judge provides you. Like, we're not supposed to look up what the law is on our own. The judge provides the law, and it's extremely specific, and do you get a book of evidence? We get a printout of all the evidence. We get a computer set up. Like, we could listen to the audio file of the undercover phone call again. We could look at all the pictures of the items and the advertising and the Facebook pages and stuff like that. So yeah, we get to review the evidence. We don't get a transcript. That's another thing. As a jury member, you're only supposed to have what you remember from the trial. You can't, there's no transcript you can refer to. You can take notes, but your notes aren't evidence. Your notes are just supposed to remind you of what happened in the trial. That I didn't know or care to know about, but that must be difficult for very, very long trials. So yeah, and that was another rule, Moisen, who can take notes and still pay attention. He said if you're while taking notes, it should not distract you from paying attention to the trial at hand. And you're supposed to, you can't bring your notes with you. You leave your notes on your seat on the jury bench until deliberation. Then obviously you take them into the room. But yeah, it's all very specifically laid out. But anyway, yeah, we went back in. That all happened. It all happened pretty quick after we came to the decision. Went back in. The main person handed the paper and said, "Yes, we received a verdict," and then they read it out. That was another thing. That's another reason I didn't want to be the jury foreperson, is because I thought that they were the ones who had to read aloud, like, guilty. But no, the judge, not the judge, the bailiff or whatever does. But then the judge did go around and ask us individually to confirm that, yes, this is my ruling. So all 12 of us had to answer yes, which was like, uh-oh, is the person who was on the fence at the very end but then agreed, are they going to be like, well, and then totally screw us all? But no, everything went, and then we were released and can go home, which I did, and now I'm here. And we will never talk about it again. We will never talk about it again. Very annoying. Did they pay you? They pay you, but well is not the right modifier. You get paid I have conflicting information. They're not very good. Like, there's nobody there to guide you, basically. And even the guides who were there were like, I don't know, let me ask. Like, throughout the entire process. It's very strange. And just not, I feel like not efficient. I mean, I guess they want to minimize any contact or influence, but still, like, not even like a sign that says go here. Like, we had to like ask, like, where do we go for this? Like, what, etc., etc. And then people who had like hotels had to like check out of their hotel on Thursday because we didn't know if it would take until Friday. It did, so then they had to go and get a new hotel reservation to stay another time, and then they bring back the receipts for those to get reimbursed. Yeah, the federal court, I think was $40 a day, which I don't divide that by. I mean, we weren't there for a total of 8 hours, but even 6 hours. Does that line up with like federal minimum wage, maybe? And then, like, we weren't reimbursed for meals, obviously, until the deliberations. They got us lunches. And you're also reimbursed for mileage. I live pretty close, so I think it's something like 62 cents a mile that you travel round trip to and from the court each day. No, yeah, it's not a job. And that's like another thing. I feel like everybody's like, well, I know you hate being on the jury, but if you're ever on trial, wouldn't you want to make sure that your jury is comprised of random people from your community? I'm like, no, I would want it to be comprised of people who want to be there, not people who are forced to be there and hate being there, like me. Are famous people even on a jury? I mean, they can be. It's all on the judge's discretion, but like that is like a question, like, are you... Or that could be an excuse you could try to get out of it. I'm well known. Right, but then of course you can't have it, you know, you don't want professional jurors because then that's not random and that's not... But it's like, the fact of the matter is it's still not random. It's still not a representative cross-section, so... Very imperfect. I don't have any better ideas, and I don't care to find them. Or participate in the current imperfection. Go on, get.
In maritime law, they have the trial at the docks to ensure a jury of your peers.
Peers. Spooky noises. Okay, now you can leave. You're dismissed, Mamatsky. You're dismissed. Oh, buddy. So yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot more I purposefully left out, and I wish to slowly not remember. But yeah, I was a little bit worried it would be even a longer, more difficult deliberation in case there was anybody sympathizing with naturopathic, homeopathic flimflammery. But yeah, the basics of the case were the fact that this person misbranded and sold items as drugs across state lines. Obviously, he sent them across state lines. They were misbranded because he said they would cure COVID and MRSA. And whenever you say something can cure something, or treat something, or diagnose something, then it becomes a drug, according to the law. It's misbranded because it isn't a drug, it isn't a cure. And also it was misbranded because the person was still using his doctor. They were still saying doctor on all the pamphlets, even though he had had his title and license stripped previously. So that's why it was misbranded. It was also misbranded. That was the prescription drug part. Not only was it a drug, but if it's something that you say can cure a disease, that has to, like, I don't know how many people know the difference between drug and prescription drug. If there's a drug that can treat or cure a disease, but the disease needs to be first diagnosed by a doctor, a professional doctor, then it becomes a prescription drug. That's why, like, if you have a vitamin B deficiency, and the doctor... Uh-oh, the girlfriend is calling. Hold on, let me get to a safe... Well, I guess it doesn't matter. Well, let's get Wolfie to spawn first. There he is. Alright. Hold on. Phone call.
Train?
I'm Mr. Bucket. Toss your balls in my top. I'm Mr. Bucket. Out of my mouth I will pop. I'm Mr. Bucket. Buckets of fun.
Phone call, Bath Bomb. Thank you very much, Doc Radis, for the 5 subs in the tub.
Bits.
Teeth bits? They're not home yet, so I still have time. Yeah, if all it takes is to mute myself, time to throw this microphone in the trash. Thank you, Room Viking, for the bits. What was I saying? Oh, yeah, like, it becomes a prescription drug. If it requires a diagnosis by a doctor. Like, you can buy Advil over the counter because you can say, I have a headache, and you don't need a diagnosis to say you have a headache. You can say that it's usually a benign enough situation, and then you can get Advil. Conversely, if your doctor diagnoses you with a vitamin B deficiency, they can write you a prescription for vitamin B, even though obviously you can pick up vitamin B as a supplement, but if it is to treat your specifically professionally diagnosed condition, ailment, then it becomes a prescription drug. And that, I mean, I feel like that is a big yes, but I was the only person who felt that. I think one other person I convinced, but that wasn't necessary, because we had already found the other parts true. and we only needed one of the three, and we had two of the three. I don't know if that honestly bared any weight. Like, it was still guilty. Like, I don't think there's, like you said, degrees of guilty, super guilty. I don't know if maybe that's how the judge might. So it was because he was a doctor prescription versus drug? No, it's because he said it could cure COVID that it was a prescription drug. Because COVID, you can only get diagnosed by a test from a doctor, professional, whatever. Like, you can feel sick, but you can't definitively say at home as a layperson, I have COVID. You have to get a test. And whatever can treat that then is a prescription. It's confusing. It's all just nomenclature. It's just the syntax. Syntax, is that the word? I don't think that's the word. It's just the verbiage. It has nothing to do with the drug itself, and that's, I think, where a lot of people were hung up. But what's the word I'm looking? I relented my case because it had already been proven the other ways. Well, people were confused because they're like, well, he didn't need a prescription to sell it. He didn't need a prescription to buy it. I don't need a prescription to buy it. Therefore, it's not a prescription drug. And it's like, no, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's because he was selling it for a cure to MRSA or COVID that conceptually, according to the FDA, he made it a prescription drug. And that was the charge. Yeah, it's all definitions. It doesn't care. It could have been fingernails clippings, or it doesn't matter what it is. It's the claim that matters. So yeah, I don't know if that is going to have any bearing on the sentence or whatever. I don't think it should, because it's just a binary guilty or not guilty as far as the verdict is concerned. But I mean, that was still part of the paperwork we had to submit. Jury duty is my anti-drug. So yeah, I wasn't about to spend another 6 hours trying to talk people into that. And that part, specifically, that part didn't need to be unanimous anyway. So I relented. Relent was the word. I relented that point. Belay that order. And then the other thing was just to acknowledge he did all this while having a prior conviction for the same exact thing, which is why he lost his license and doctor and was barred from practicing naturopathy and homeopathy in the future. Yet he's still... Oh! Oh no! Oh, I got it! I'm fine. Don't come down here, Wolfie. Okay, good. Ah, buddy. And yeah, was he escorted out of the courtroom? No, he wasn't in jail. He wasn't arrested or anything. Like I said, I don't know what we never know. Well, if I look it up on the internet in news or something like that, eventually I'll get to know what his sentence was. But yeah, no, he wasn't in handcuffs or anything like that, or anything like that. The fine, it just might be a monetary fine. It might be some time in jail. It might be further or longer, like probation. If you're ever, it doesn't matter if you even sell any sort of supplement or anything, then that violates your I don't know what the whatever is punishment is. So yeah, I mean, I found that to be interesting. That was, I mean, it was also very annoying. It's like I've already been very anxious, and like everybody has, about the whole COVID and pandemic and this and that and everything that's happened, and family members who've died, and not seeing my family in many years, and obviously the news and blah 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 blah. That, like, here's another way you can be involved. Kurt, specifically, here's another way that this whole thing can get on your nerves. From another angle that you did not expect. But yeah, I mean, I guess it was okay, because I mean, I am aware of the whole anti-vax movement, and the whole Andrew Wakefield thing, and measles, and you know, the whole autism argument, and you know that, and this is along those lines of pseudoscience, and that, I mean, that was another thing that at first, not everybody, but some people were like, well, he didn't hurt anybody. It didn't cause any harm. It was just this benign garlic pill and some other herb. Andrew Wakefield, that's the guy who published a study that said vaccines cause autism. That has since been redacted, and he has since had his doctorate and title invalidated. But it snowballed since then. Yeah, study. And that's, I mean, that has caused harm, obviously. So yeah, that was a lot of people's excuses, and it's like, well, you don't wait until, like, oh, somebody died, I guess now he's guilty, you know. It's was he wildly biased or wildly wrong? Yes. They're on the YouTubes. It's about 40 minutes long, but there is a good summation by a YouTuber. I think it's called anti-vaccine. Oh, careful, Wolfie. A measured response. That's pretty good. I mean, if you want to listen to a white YouTuber guy talk about it, but he lays out, like, the entire thing. Wakefield fabricated his data to confirm his own bias against vaccine. He fabricated data because he himself was going to release a different vaccine alternative and was being paid by that manufacturer to do so. So there's multiple levels to that. But a very loud community has latched onto that and are grasping at it, and causing kids to die of measles, among other things, and refuse COVID vaccines, etc., 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 etc. So I don't know. I mean, does it feel good to have been part of the process to prove the guilt, or be part of proving the guilt of one of those people? No. I mean, as much as I want that to be the case, no. It's still, the whole process sucked. Being away sucked. Having to be in a room full of strangers sucks. I mean, like, I feel like it's possible. Again, speculation, but we've already delivered our verdict, so it doesn't matter. I feel like the defendant probably requested an in-person trial, which would have made it further delayed because they need to make the preparations and make sure it's safe. Wait for the okay from the health department to have in person, you know, just do anything to, I don't know, maybe maliciously make it cost as much as possible and be as much of a hassle for the prosecutors. I don't know. I mean, it was certainly part of their tactic to try to have a tainted jury pool. I don't know. Probably thought in-person would make it more likely to have COVID-denying jurors. I don't know how they choose jurors for Zoom trials, but I assume it's the same imperfect way if it's to follow the same rules. Never attribute malice to what can be attributed to incompetence, and vice versa. Right, the first question was, are you okay being in a room with unvaxxed people? That was quantified by that with, and would it, and if so, would it impact your decision-making during a trial? Like, they didn't care if we were vaxxed or unvaxxed. And like I said, almost half of the jury were people of retirement age who are in the high-risk category of COVID. So I'm, like, still have anxieties about, like, obviously I'm not friends with any of these people. I'm not going to keep in touch with them, but I don't know. Like, I know I'm vaccinated, and I hope most of them are, but even so, what if with all this contact of people, something was brought in, you know, during that? What could happen? That is kind of a nerve-wracking thing. As somebody who, like myself, I've never been particularly scared of catching COVID myself because I'm unlikely to die from it, even if I wasn't vaccinated, just due to my age and health. My anxiety comes from, I don't want to be someone who then passes it on and is responsible for X number of people getting it and having those worse outcomes, or any outcome. Which is, it's again, something I've learned, I think we've all learned, is that not a lot of people also think that way. Not a lot of people care about the other people in the room, in the country, etc., etc. And that's disturbing. That's been an unfortunate truth to have realized over the past 2 years. Oh, Wolfie, what, you fell in the water again? That's something I wish we never found out, or had to find out, but we did. Oh, Wolfie, come back. Yellow. Yellow. There we go. Ooh, buddy. So that was that. And like I said, I will never talk about it again. Only in the context of saying I will never do that again, because I will take the advice of people who have avoided such things and simply not respond to those questionnaires again. Although, legally speaking, since I served on a federal jury, I don't have to serve on any other jury, federal or local, for the next 2 years. But I'm going to put a few zeros after that and say the next 200 years, because I'm not going to respond. I did, though. I mean, that's your excuse to get out of it. Like, you still can if you get a jury summons and you don't mention that. But at least, again, all of the information and all of the directions we've received throughout this process are very non-existent and confusing. So, that's what the information we have. I've been picked twice and called on at least 6 times. In a federal court or local courts? I don't think there's any such stipulations to local courts. Yeah, county, that's not, it's federal court. If you're in a federal court jury, then you're excused for 2 years from any jury. Did they specify which 2 years? Do I get to pick? Specifically the ones in which I receive any mailings. But this, like I said, this is the first time I've lived in Illinois, I've lived in Arizona, I now live in Washington. Among all these states, among all the time I've been registered to vote and had a driver's license and whatever other means they choose to pull from, this is the first time I've ever received anything in the mail for jury duty. Yeah, different counties and local things might have their own rules, but anyway, it's over and done with. I have expunged it from the records. And that concludes this Farlands or Bust segment of this stream. Snoring noises. Snoring noises. Can the stenographer take that down? Snoring noises, please. Oh, perfect, Kaylee. I mean, perfect me. 2 hours and 40 minutes into this stream. 59. We've added 59 megabytes in this last moment.